Well, it is Wednesday, definitely a week before Valentine's Day. So it is February the 7th. And of course, a lot of things are going on in the world. And I've got one of the founders with me, Nick Palveda. I was up late last night dealing with Rick Rosner and his show. And I see that Rick is here joining us and all along those lines. But definitely a number of things are happening in the world. Hamas offers the remaining hostages for prisoners, and a 135-day ceasefire is in a deal that Biden is calling a little over the top. So Hamas is proposing a 135-day Gaza truce with complete Israel withdrawal. So that is something that is going on and all along those lines. And definitely there are things happening in Pakistan as well. There was a Pakistani election, and apparently a blast near a Pakistani candidate's office killed 26 on election eve. So on the eve of the election, there was a deadly bombing in that part of the world. And Russia unleashes a massive airstrike on Ukraine, according to Zelensky. So Ukraine air defenses are under pressure as two Russian missile types again evade interception and all along those lines. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how all of these wars are playing out and in that way. A IDF reveals a Gaza tunnel previously used by Hamas officials with sale for hostages and a barred gate, a musty chamber, and dirty dishes were inside the underground compound where Israel says hostages were held. So that is something else that is going on as this war is now in day 124. And some people are wondering why the Houthis are really attacking ships in the Red Sea. And definitely when Houthis fire missiles, there are some Navy warship officers that must take split second action and all along those lines. So I've seen stories about that and seeing how that is going as well. Saudi Arabia says there will be no diplomatic relations with Israel without an independent Palestine. So definitely, Saudi Arabia is claiming that the U.S. suggested normalization could come without a ceasefire. So definitely, as I've said before, it looks like things are expanding throughout the whole area of the Middle East and in that way. And the farmers are in the news as well, particularly there in Europe. The European Union has scrapped the pesticide proposal in another concession to those protesting farmers. So, definitely after those protests, there might be some concessions in that area. So, definitely it looks like there are folks that are paying attention to how the climate is impacting their livelihood and all along those lines. And if you're into big animals, a pod of orcas were seen trapped by a thick sea ice off of northern Japan, and now they are believed to have been freed. So it does look like they have managed to escape and all along those lines. So definitely, it's definitely a lot of things that are going on, and apparently Joe Biden is leading a Western coalition of the killing in back in the Israeli Gaza war, according to some people. That's what they are claiming. Don't know that I necessarily agree with them in that way, but we'll see what folks have to say and how that plays into the political discourse. And UNRWA, the aid agency in Gaza, is set to lose $65 million in some of their fundies, according to documents in that way. And we know the Nordstrom was in the news in the past, and it looks like the Nordstrom is in the news this time as Sweden is closing its investigations into the Nordstrom pipeline explosion. So they've ended their probe and they're now going to hand their evidence over to Germany, and we'll see whether any actions come out of that. And Brussels is launching a legal action against Hungary's sovereignty law. So, sometimes people want their own independence, and apparently the EU has launched legal action in that way. And Prince Williams is going to return to work after Kate's surgery and King Charles' cancer. So, right now, it looks like he is seen for the first time since returning to royal duties after King Charles had that health bout and is still dealing with his health concerns and all in that way. So, like I said about Pakistan, it looks like they're on the edge as old dynasties vie for power, and the populist candidate Imran Khan languages there in prison. So, sometimes these political opponents wind up in the gulag, in the in the prisons and all along those lines. So, it'll be interesting to see what's going on there. Some people are wondering how Kyiv will spend the EU's $54 billion in aid. So definitely that is something that people are paying attention to as well. And of course, there are things going on in other parts of the world. For example, the postponement of elections in Senegal is definitely going on, as a West African bloc has asked Senegal to reverse the presidential election day that caused an uproar, because a lot of people were upset because they wanted to get that president into place, whoever that president was going to be. But there seems like there was an uproar by some of the fellow African nations. So maybe there'll be an earlier election versus a later election, and in that way. So we'll see what happens. And of course, there's things going on in the United States news as well. So we've got the Jennifer Crumbley case, and definitely that is something is going on. And the Michigan school shooter's mom is likely to spend years in prison. And definitely there was a jury forewoman that came out and pointed out to a key piece of evidence in finding Miss Crumbley guilty. I think I've even heard Rick say that she was not looking good on the stands and all along those lines. So definitely we'll see what's going on in that way. And I've got to ask Rick, so I'll actually get ready to bring it up as I get to some of the other things in the news, like Trump not being on the ballot, but Haley still loses the Nevada's Republican president. So even though Trump wasn't on the ballot and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. So I'm going to bring in Rick and bring in some of the other folks as well, because I do have a question, because I don't know the answer. And they tell me if you don't know an answer, ask somebody that is smarter than you, and all along those lines. So, there's this notion of a conversation around an impeachment that was going on, and that involved Mayorkas and all along those lines. And I understand that a politician left the hospital to vote against Alejandro Mayorkas, and that was none other than Al Green. And the only Al Green I know is the musician. But I was wondering if this is the same Al Green, or if he's related to the Al Green that's the musician, because apparently he left his hospital to vote.
I don't know if they're related, but it's not the same Al Green. So yeah, he was the impeachment failed by 214 to 216, though some sources say it was tied at 215. And they also say that it will probably pass when they try it again next week,
Right.
With more people in place, because there were some absences. But being impeached is a two-step process. You get impeached in the House. They say, yeah, you've done stuff that's worthy of trial, and then you get tried in the Senate. And even conservative, super staunch MAGA conservative lawyers like Jonathan Turley are saying there's no basis for this. Yeah. So even when Mayorkas is impeached in the House, when it goes to the Senate will be, will not, kick him out of office.
So he'll still get to stay in office.
It's a waste of time. And so the thing is, this is really showing how bad and dysfunctional Congress is when they're wasting time on this, when like the fire is burning in your house, and what you're doing is you're reading a book in the backside because you think it's going to make you feel better. And that's what I see about the impeachment. We have some serious issues in the United States. When will these people grow up? Social Security is going bankrupt this decade. I didn't see them mention that. Yes, within a decade. Medicare goes broke before the end of this decade. And I don't see them mentioning that. Instead, they're running around trying to blame somebody on immigration issues, which are so complex that they can't even pass a bloody bill.
But speaking of complex issues, Nick, and everything, apparently there is a very complicated issue. I know you sometimes tease about it, as do other people on the network, but a lot of people get concerned about the climate, and apparently Biden's latest climate rules are cracking down on manufacturing and ignoring industry warnings of economic devastation, according to some of those fine folks at Fox and all along those lines. And apparently they're toughening the limits on deadly air pollution, and the EPA is going to be cracking down and all in that space. I don't know if they're going to stop by like maybe Pittsburgh and some of these places got heavy pollution and stop the factories from doing what they're doing. But what is your thoughts, because of both you and Rick? Because definitely it sounds like a noble cause in one way, but it also sounds like it would be hard to enforce.
Well, do these people have priorities? Climate issues are a longer term horizon. I think someday somebody has to sit these congressmen and senators down and prioritize and do timelines on when you need to address issues. Climate
But I mean,
change.
it's Fox. So like I watched the coverage yesterday of Jennifer Crumbly being found guilty on they showed that live on CNN and MSNBC, and you can always count on Fox. Fox was so freaked out about the Trump ruling that he wasn't immune from prosecution for anything he may have done while president, that they were going crazy on that, so much so that they avoided this very juicy story with Jennifer Crumbly while it was
Really?
unfolding.
Okay. I think I find that interesting. First of all, the immunity. Trump never went to law school, but if you did go to law school, understand that certain positions and certain that you take, you have what they call qualified immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you're doing espionage around the world and stuff like that, the president will have qualified immunity. Then there's something, qualified immunity isn't blanket immunity, and none of it's in the Constitution, so it's kind of like made up, and so he had a right to challenge it. But the thing is, if he went to law school and he had some good lawyers, he'd say, look, dude, this is a loser. If you want to go fight a loser, fine. Because if he went to office, let's say Biden decided to pull out a gun and just shoots the Secretary of State, qualified immunity wouldn't apply. Okay, let's say Biden decides he's going to send troops into Jordan and attack what he thinks are Houthi rebels, then it would apply. So there's a whole history of immunity that does exist. This isn't one of them. And I just go, why would you fight the loser? And so that's a loser for him. Now, the winner for him is actually him not being on the ballot. Okay. There's nothing that allows a Secretary of State to declare sua sponte in the state of Maine by having a group of their buddies together that he was guilty of insurrection. Okay. He has to go through, he has what they call notice of opportunity to be heard. He has Fifth Amendment rights. All those rights were thrown out the door. And so he's going to win that one. But Trump doesn't understand his losers or winners, or he tries to make everything a winner. And just, as they say in Pawn Stars, that ain't happening. Now, the Crumbly.
Well, Trump makes a ton of money just running for president.
I know that's the reason he's doing it. He's money to pay his bills. But the Crumbly thing is very interesting because my position on guns changed over the last 50 years. When I used to have an arsenal of guns and then figured out that people don't know how to handle them. To have young people under the age of 18 handle a gun is a big mistake. Meatball, as Hulk Hogan would say to Sylvester Stallone. Big mistake, Meatball. So the thing is, not surprising and basically a good decision that she's held liable. You don't take a 15-year-old.
Hold on a second. I got to ask you about that because you said that it is not good for young people to hold guns. And I think that there is a part of the world, and Sasha can correct me if I am wrong, where young people are doing a valid job of using those guns effectively against the Russian invasion. Because I'm thinking a number of those people that are doing that are like in that 15 to 25-year-old range and everything. Am I correct in thinking that, Sasha, that there are a number of young people that have picked up guns in order to fight back against that Russian invasion?
Yeah, that's good. It's well known information.
Let's qualify this. There's no Russian invasion. We live in the United States of America. We have more guns than any other country. And the thing is, show me one reason a 15 or 18-year-old should have a gun. The reason I changed my position, my first cousin shot and killed his best friend, okay, and blew his head off. Now, when you see stuff like that, you start going, maybe it's not a good, and he was like 15 years old. Maybe it's not a good idea. Now, this was years ago, so the parents weren't prosecuted. They were out hunting, but maybe it's not a good idea for kids. Now you have a kid who's a mental patient, basically. Hand him a gun, train him how to use a gun, and then send him to school. Okay, talk about a bad idea. Yes, it's an extremely bad idea. The judge will send a message to all the gun-loving totem people that this is not a good idea. You have to lock your guns in and keep them away from minors.
So,
By the way,
Nick, if I'm hearing you correctly, because there are a number of people, I did not necessarily get involved in that culture, but I do have family members that are, because I definitely grew up in rural North Carolina, that do go have guns because they are doing hunting, whether they are hunting turkey, whether they're hunting pheasant, or whether they're hunting other things that are out there to be hunted, including venison. And sometimes these are family outings. So sometimes it is not just the adult that's going hunting the deer. It is sometimes their kids are going hunting with them as well. You're saying that you don't like that idea of kids going out hunting.
No, Mark, that's what happened to my cousin. He blew his best friend's head off. Okay. So the thing is, don't hand me that piece of trash that we're on a family outing and we're going to go peasant hunting, and you hand a 15-year-old a gun and it was an accident. He blew his friend's head off. And I've seen this, Mark. You know what they do is they hold the gun like this, and then they kind of like pointed at Rick, and they didn't realize it wasn't loaded, and they pressed the trigger, and oh, boom, there goes his head. What a surprise. Oh, but we were on a family outing. What happened? Come on, Mark.
The first time I held a gun, I was so excited because guns are fun. You know, they got a heft to them, and I got very excited. I was about 16.
I had a 44 semi-automatic. Okay, there's nothing fun than pulling semi-automatic on a 44.
So I was very excited. I got so excited that I accidentally pulled the trigger and shot myself, and I was just lucky it was a BB gun.
Rick and Nick, isn't there a major organization now, whether we like the organization or not, because it is a nonprofit, if I remember correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, don't the Boy Scouts and definitely train some and do some outings that involve guns and all along those lines? And I know that probably the NRA is very much involved in guns as well, but definitely, what is your thoughts?
Right,
I think that I know the NRA, and I think they teach guns at the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, they do have a gun course of the Boy Scouts, and for the most part, they're BB guns. I haven't seen them use 22s. By the way, there's a big difference between a 22 and a BB gun. I was such a wild man when I was younger. We used to have BB gun fights. We'd shoot each other with BB guns.
Yeah, my brother and I did that a little bit.
Did you do that? That's not. By the way, between me and the stars, that ain't smart.
No,
you know, my parents should have pulled those guns away. If you had a 22 fight, you could kill somebody. Seriously.
Yeah, we were looking at maybe getting some kind of gun thing for self-protection. We were comparing like pellet guns to 22s, and there's a 22 has 20-40 times as many foot-pounds of energy in the projectile.
Yeah, you're right. And then the thing is, then you can up your game and get a 357. The bullets are huge. I mean, you can forget it. You
can even get in. I know that you can get what do you call them, like machine gun type weapons at some of these gun stores and all along the line. So that I have a problem with it. People are getting AK-47s and are much more higher tech.
Semi-automatics and automatics, Mark. Those are weapons of mass destruction. I mean, I have to admit, I was like Rick. I enjoyed my time with the guns out on our lake place. We had 10 acres. It was a second home in the country, and there wasn't anybody around, and we could sit there. Literally, I would take guns. I would shoot down trees because these automatics were so good. You could actually go zip and knock a tree down. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
but that was then. Today, no, it's not a good idea. No,
I get you, but even the automatics, I understand what you're saying, because as I've said on this show, and I'll say it again, if you are going to hunt deer, if you're going to get some venison or something along those lines, if you're going to hunt buffalo in other parts of the world and everything, and AK-47 or some of these automatics, there's not going to be much.
Okay, so you keep saying automatics, and if there were a gun advocate on the show, they'd correct you and say there's semi-auto. Auto is where you just hold down the trigger and just bullets come out as fast as mechanically possible. A semi-auto, you still have to pull the trigger.
Right. I had semi-automatics. I never had an automatic. But the semi-automatic.
I'm glad you distinguished that. I did have a question for you, definitely, Rick, and everything, because we kind of talked about it this morning on your Naked at Night and all along those lines. But there is, we were mentioning it, I mentioned it earlier, this notion of climate change. And apparently there's a lot of climate over there in Southern California, because apparently y'all had some monster storm that came, and some people are saying it was even worse in some areas than the alarming forecast. And there were hundreds of mudslides and flooded roads. And I hate to tell you this, but another storm is on the way, Rick. So there might need to be more mudslides.
We need the rain. We always need the rain, but I don't like it. It flooded our garage. I still haven't gone in there to completely inventory the damage done. We had a little mudslide across the street from us. So, I like when rain comes down more gently.
I agree with you on that and everything. And then I've got another question that involves California, and I think Sasha's gonna have fun with this one and everything. If we can't keep track of our own helicopters, maybe we need to send them over to Ukraine because apparently a military helicopter with 5 Marines on board is gone missing en route to California. So I guess they were en route to California, and now they are searching for it. And this is a few minutes ago because it was en route from Las Vegas. Maybe they were leaving the Super Bowl or heading to from the Super Bowl activities to San Diego, but they were going somewhere and now they're lost and everything, and now they're trying to rescue them and everything. So we've got this high-tech equipment, and apparently some of our people don't know how to drive their own high-tech equipment and all along those lines. So I was just wondering your thoughts about this missing military helicopter, and maybe they're going to fly it into Ukraine, since I'm thinking the Ukrainian soldiers will know how to navigate it maybe better than some of our own.
I'd like to see stats on the accident rate for helicopters versus private planes. Because it's just, given the history of people and helicopters, it seems like a bad idea to regularly take them. You've got the means of, with a plane, the wings keep you up and help you glide, if you lose engines. But with helicopters, the thing that keeps you up and the thing that moves you around is the same thing. And that's so much more subject to catastrophic failure.
Yeah, I think the helicopter is more dangerous, but what really is a dangerous situation that the U.S. Congress should address, rather than an impeachment of Homeland Security, when they do not have a good immigration policy, they do not have a bill. So we have to call out the incompetent people in Congress, because Fox won't do it because a lot of them are Republicans, and the major media won't do it because they don't really care. But let's look at Ukraine right now. The EU just voted like 50 billion to Ukraine, and the US is sitting on their little twats, not doing anything. And let me tell you, and this is what American people don't know. There are people around the world that hate America. They hate you, okay? They would love to see you dead or enslaved. They could care less. And part of them are actually in today's Russia. So if we don't get off our keister and do something about this, somebody said this could be a major problem. You cannot hand Putin a victory on the table on the country of Ukraine. That is a no-no. And why Congress isn't getting off their butt, they need to segregate away from all this immigration. It has nothing to do with the border issues. The border issues have nothing to do with what's going on in Ukraine. And if we don't get off our keister and do something, and I would say what we should do is match the EU. Let's try to figure out, okay, what should we do? The EU just did a package of around 50 billion or something like that. We need to match the EU, okay, send Ukraine the support, send them the weapons and ammunition so they can win that stupid war over there, because this guy is just basically.
But Nick, it looks like they finally took your advice. Maybe they're listening to Pod TV, because the Senate is to vote on what they're calling Plan B. So they have actually decoupled the Ukraine voting with the border security. So they will be voting on these issues separately. And I know that you've mentioned that in the past and everything. So they might vote on Ukraine funding, and they might tie that to Israel aid, but they are definitely decoupling it from the border security. And I know you said several times in the last week that that's something that they should do. So maybe they've been listening to Pod TV.
Immigration is a totally different issue. It's actually an extremely complex issue, and we have to have a policy about it. See, we start off in immigration. We don't even have a policy. How many people do we need to bring in, and why, and who, and how? We used to have a policy that says, bring me, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. And it was a Statue of Liberty. Now that's not of our policy, but we don't even have one. Yeah, Sasha.
Nick, everything what you're saying is very reasonable and makes a lot of sense, unless you would understand where is it all coming. It's your friend Donald Trump who wants to make help to Ukraine impossible, because he wants to please his friend Vladimir Putin, and that's one reason why Carlson is there, and he's trying to prepare the alliance between United States run by Trump, Hungary with Viktor Orban, and Russia with Vladimir Putin. It will be the great blow to democracy around the world. And not only democracy, it will be a blow to all free, somber people around the world. It will be. And, as for example, John Bolton, who spent with Trump a lot of time while he was president, that next thing he will dismantle NATO, or at least as a minimum, he will take US out of NATO. And US will become a third-rated player in the world, especially when there are so many people, so many countries who hate US. And you mentioned that absolutely correctly. And all these organizations like BRICS, with Russia at the ruling this organization, is they all fight US on all fronts, including economical fronts. They want to kill US dollar as a reserve currency, and they are inventing now their gold-baked currency. So eventually, US will lose its dominance as a economic power. It's a horrible consequences. Now, you mentioned something earlier, Nick, that some secretary in one of the states which banned Trump from Maine, correct, which banned from the ballot. And you mentioned that she, with her friends, they could make this ruling without Trump found guilty of insurrection, but that's not requirement. He has not have to be found guilty of insurrection. It's participation in insurrection, and his participation in insurrection, it's a fact. Let him prove that he didn't participate. Why do you have to prove that he did indeed participate? Let him prove that he didn't.
Sasha, I hate to bring you back to Law 101, but the preponderance of the evidence and the burden of proof is on.
There is no burden of proof required. Look at the Constitution. Read the Constitution. Find me where is the burden of proof required.
Every attorney who's listening to this, we have a lot of attorneys listening, know the burden of proof.
But it's not required.
Plaintiff, not the defendant. Trump doesn't have to prove anything.
And the Secretary of Maine doesn't have to prove anything, except
yes,
that
the Secretary of Maine has to prove it, but they have to do it through a proper legal process.
It's not required.
Okay, fine, Sasha. I just declared as president of CEO.
No, listen, I'm not in a position to argue with you. All I did, I read the Constitution, which is in English, and in the Constitution it's participation.
Watch, you're going to get bounced out of
the language.
It's not going to be funny. Yeah, right.
The language might permit that, but with 6 conservative justices on the Supreme Court, they're going to say, they're not going to rule in favor of that.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a different
I'm licensed before the Supreme Court of the United States. I've sat before these people. I've lost cases before these people. I kind of understand their thinking. I've read a lot of their cases. Let me tell you, on this one, what you're doing is you're barking a loser. Unlike the other one where he's saying I got blanket immunity, that's his winner. I mean that's his loser. The winner is for Trump is this other thing that Maine and Colorado did. And if I was a betting man, I'd be all in on it. I mean, they don't probably have odds in Las Vegas on it, but I would push a lot of money on that one because it is a tough, if not to impossible case. And you're right, Rick, before an impossible court. Okay? Yeah,
the odds aren't good. You can look it up, and you bet $20 to win $1.
I'd love to see the line on that on Las Vegas. But in terms of Trump having power, he doesn't have any power in the United States. He has 0 position here.
Formally.
0. Okay. The only power Trump has is the power that other people give him. So the Senate doesn't have to give him any power. So if the Senate could grow a pair, okay, Trump doesn't have any power there. He has no power over the Congress. He has no power over the House. He has no power over the judiciary. He only has power.
It's not 100% correct, because Mike Johnson, number 3 person in the United States, admitted himself that he consults Trump on any and all issues. So how you can say that the person who Speaker of the House has to consult has no power?
That's Mike Johnson giving him power. Trump has no power. That's Mike Johnson not growing a pair and growing up a little bit.
Okay.
So as soon as he grows up and becomes
yourself.
a man, then Trump has no power.
He has no power. You said correctly.
Yeah,
right?
he has no
If
power
somebody like Mike Johnson gives him the power, that means that Trump has power after all.
That's correct, but it's only because only because Mike Johnson.
Agree.
Only. So the thing is, for me, I look who's the adult in the room. Okay, it's not Mike Johnson. If that's what he's doing, he's a little wimp, a toy. And the problem is the Republican Party doesn't call him out for that.
That's all there is to it. He is a traitor. He has to be arrested and put in jail because he violates the Constitution.
The Soviet Union solution.
Hold on. He will have a trial 6-7 years later. He will have a good lawyers who will prove that it was not correct. He should not be put in jail or so on. Let him do that.
So I want to talk about the history of Trump and Putin, which is like a more than 20-year history. Trump used to own a ton of beauty pageants, and 1 year he holds like Miss Universe or something in Moscow, and he meets Putin, and Putin sees in Trump a useful idiot who's subject to flattery and cajoling, like they'll get to build Trump Tower Moscow. And Trump often makes terrible deals, but some of the best deals he made were with, and Sasha will back me up on this, are with Russian oligarchs. The deal is Putin steals big chunks of Russia, gives them to his friends. His friends become billionaires, but they only get to keep their billions as long as they remain friends with Putin, who can freak out that somebody's getting too powerful and take away all your riches. So you have to get money out of the country. You have to launder it by moving it out of the country. And one way some of the oligarchs got some money out of the country is by buying property from Trump. And the deal is when you're trying to launder money, that money is no good unless you can get it out. So you're going to make it. Yeah, you might have $100 million on paper, but if you can go ahead and offer Trump $50 million for a villa or something, and that money, when it takes the form of a villa, becomes real because the $100 million wasn't real because Putin could pull it at any time.
You just missed one important part here. It's a Deutsche Bank. Without Deutsche Bank, this scheme would work as well. Now, with Deutsche Bank, that worked perfectly. And Deutsche Bank paid something like 34, maybe $36 billion for money laundering charges and so on. So it's all well documented. When one thing, remember the Mueller appointment as a special prosecutor? And from the beginning, I knew that that's not going to work because you cannot do anything without following the money. And Mueller was denied to follow the money. And without that, you cannot get Trump.
Hey, Sasha, speaking of following the money, because, some people on this network are fans of what I'm going to mention. Others are not fans, and we all have our reasons for wanting things that I'm going to mention. But even I know a good negotiation deal and all along those lines. So while I may be a backer and think that at some point Palestine needs its own state and everything, I do not understand the notion of this deal that they are offering, meaning the terrorists over there at Hamas, because they are saying that they're going to give up all remaining Israeli hostages, which I think is in the neighborhood of a few hundred or something along those lines, in exchange for a 135-day ceasefire, a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and the release of well over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Last time I checked, 1,000 versus 100 or hundreds does not compute, and everything along those lines. So
Israel has a history Israel has a history of making agreeing to one-sided deals. Like there was Hamas was holding one Israeli soldier, and in exchange for getting him back, this was a few years back, they got, I don't know, hundreds maybe of, of
1,026 for one, but it was not Hamas, it was Hezbollah.
okay, sorry.
No problem.
But,
Okay, I'll tell you one thing. You have to study the history. If you don't study the history, you don't understand the present. If you go back thousands of years ago, how the first states appeared, there were tribes. And once they became more powerful, more organized, and they needed regulations between members of the tribe, how to behave, what's right, what's wrong, or so on. So that's led to the birth of states, of early states, whether it's Sumer, Egypt, and Babylonia, and so on and on and on. Palestinians today are tribes. They don't have any elements of state building yet. All they talking about is destruction of Israel and killing all the Jews. With that only, you cannot have a state. It just doesn't work that way. So if you have tribes who want to liquidate your country and your people, what you have to do is to exterminate that tribe. So the Israel has to at least exterminate the Hamas. That's what he's doing. And until that job will be done, there will be no peace. Remember Second World War? The countries of Germany, Japan, Italy as well, they attacked much more, much bigger, much better developed country, much stronger country, much more populous countries of England, then Russia, then United States, Soviet Union, then United States. And you know the result was a total unconditional capitulation. That's what's happened right here. Hamas attacked much bigger, much stronger, much more populous country, Israel. There has to be a total unconditional capitulation. Once that's done, then we can start fixing things and talk about how it should be run, what should be done, and so on and on and on. If there is no unconditional capitulation, it's no starter. There will be no.
But Sasha, a couple of things, and I know that Toby's mentioned this to you before, and I'll mention it again and everything. And I will say it several times because I actually know people in that society and all along those lines. So yes, I agree with you that Hamas is a terrorist organization and must be gone at any cost and all costs. And I do hear what you're saying, because that is something that is said quite often in the civil rights movement, that if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat it, and all along those lines. But that being said, not every Palestinian is a member of these terrorist organizations, and not every Palestinian falls into those camps, because I think even Rick said that he went into Europe and saw a number of people that might be Muslim that were not necessarily in the notion of trying to terrorize and destroy Israel. So there might be some people.
Mark, doesn't matter. Israel will do and continue to do and will finish its job regardless what all this demonstration in U.S. University campuses and all people who are supporting Palestine and from the river to the sea, all that garbage doesn't matter. Israel will do and will finish its job. That's all there is to it. You know,
in terms of getting rid of the terrorist organization, I would agree with you on that and everything. I see that Steve has joined us and everything. I did have something slightly unrelated, but before Steve gets to some things, I know he wants to talk about something as well. I did see that there was some more news out of California, and Rick, you're going to love this one because, I think Nick might enjoy it as well, because there are some folks in San Diego and around California that are saying that some of these laws that are taking place, including in some of our liberal states, both California and Maine, might lead to more sex trafficking. So apparently Maine became the first state to partially decriminalize prostitution. I know that parts of Nevada have done that as well, but this is the first state apparently that has done that, and all along those lines. And they are saying that a church service was disturbed described as a rampant San Diego prostitution was hitting that area. And I know that you're in more of the LA area, but Rick, you probably have friends in San Diego. And apparently there's a lot of people that are making raucous noises in San Diego and all along those lines. And it's disturbing those fine church folks and all along those lines. So I just wanted y'all's thoughts about this notion of prostitution being decriminalized, because apparently that's something that Maine, and I know Maine was also one of the states that got Trump off the ballot, but now they're going to decriminalize prostitution. And I know that another show we've got, Weed Wednesday, there are states that are decriminalizing marijuana. So maybe this is something that
they call prostitution a victimless crime, except that it often isn't when the sex workers are exploited by, their pimps and are unwillingly forced into sex work. I don't. Various sides have various statistics, and there was the Sound of Freedom movie about all the missing children in America due to sex slavery, and then it turns out like the guy portrayed in the Sound of Freedom might himself be a sex trafficker. So the whole mess is unclear to me. Prostitution's always been with us, though the landscape has changed. In the 1930s, there were a lot of people went to prostitutes. There were streetwalkers in the big cities all the way through the 80s, 90s, and then the internet moved prostitution online. You should probably be able to, if you're protected from being exploited, you should be able to do sex work, legally in most cases. I'm Twitter friends with several sex workers, and they're just, that's their job.
It's their day job. That's their regular job and everything. Nick, what is your thought? You're in the legal space and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take, because like I said, there's this notion of decriminalization, whether it's decriminalization of marijuana. And I know we've got Jeff Eichen that talks about that on his show on Wednesdays. And we've also got now this effort to decriminalize marijuana. So I just wanted your take on this from a legal perspective.
I'm for decriminalizing it. I mean, the thing is, if you look at it, the issue that several countries have, like Amsterdam and the Netherlands, have legalized prostitution, and so does Nevada. And it tends to get rid of that. You see, our solution is, hey, we got a problem. We have two solutions. One, throw money at it. Number two, throw them in jail. And those are only two metrics. Third solution, legalize and regulate. Legalize and regulate is a good solution when you have a problem like that just isn't going to go away. So I'm all in favor of the legalization and regulation of it. I don't have a lot of background or history in that whole area because I've never worked in that area. So I'm just going off of what my personal beliefs are, that we have too many people in prison, Mark. We have 2 million people in prison in the United States that we're paying for. And so the extent you can decriminalize certain activities, you want to do so.
And not just regular prisons, but we've got them in both the regular prisons as well as the for-profit prisons. Because as I know Sasha knows, because I think he's even talked about it on the investment show once, there is a whole notion of businesses that are that for-profit, whether it's for-profit hospitals or for-profit businesses. So definitely the capitalist model has come into the prison system as well. But I don't know if Sasha's got any thoughts around that, because I did see his hand up also.
Actually, they've shown yesterday the prison, which is very close to Mar-a-Lago, and that's where Trump is expected to.
Hey, they have a prison close to Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, there's a prison close to Mar-a-Lago.
Nice. On Palm Beach? Are you serious?
It's absolutely.
I have never seen it.
They've shown inside. It's a beautiful, well kept, very comfortable. They have tennis courts. They have television sets. They have everything.
Sasha, I used to live in Palm Beach County. I almost bought a house in Palm Beach. I made a mistake.
But hold on a second. But Nick, hold on a second. Because as you know, because I've talked to you about it, and I think I've even mentioned on this show before, there was a brief time that I worked at a daily newspaper in Boca Raton, Florida, which is kind of near West Palm Beach, and all along those lines, a very rich and well-to-do area, and all along those lines. And ironically, the police station was actually near what would be considered the projects. Because yes, even in Boca Raton, there is a project area. So the police department was literally right next to the project. I don't think that was accidental. I think that they did that for a reason, because even if you've got a bunch of wealthy people or a high class neighborhood, you might have to have some people that are your workers and other people that are not as affluent. So you got to face some place to put them, and that's where they put them, was in like a project area. And like I said, the police department was right nearby.
You know, if you go to Palm Beach County, where I used to live, 80% of all the houses are in gated communities. Mm-hmm. So when I left Palm Beach County, because my wife said, "Hey, we can't have your kids grow up here because this ain't normal," I thought it was. I finally found out people don't live in gated communities. I was going like, "Hey, what's going on here? Where's your security? Where's your gates and all that other stuff?"
Nick, I was able to find information. What? The address is 3228 Gun Club Road, West Palm Beach, Florida.
West Palm Beach is not Palm Beach, my friend.
It doesn't matter.
West Palm Beach is not the island. Okay, there's an island.
10 minutes drive from Mar-a-Lago. That's what. Anyway, that's closest what there is to it. Maybe he will reject it and ask for another.
Sasha, I know that area like the back of my hand. I mean, I've lived there for 5 years. Okay, and been to all those cities up there. Okay, West Palm Beach is not Palm Beach. Palm Beach is
I agree with you on that. I'm talking about the closest prison to Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
That's the one that's close.
So when
I didn't say that it's in Palm Beach versus
go camp out at the prison. Okay. You know,
well, there and everything.
You know what's shocking about Palm Beach? Palm Beach is not gated. You know, when Boca, the reason I went to Boca, all the communities there are gated communities. You have security and everywhere. You go to Palm Beach, you can actually just drive in to these people's houses. I found that to be absolutely disgusting. So I was going like,
but Nick, there are two towns. There are two towns on both sides of Boca Raton that are not gated either. Because if you lived in Boca Raton or you know West Palm Beach, there is on one side Deerfield Beach, and on the other side there is
Deerfield and
those
Delray.
are gated communities.
I just want to quickly tell the story of how Trump got Mar-a-Lago for cheap, which is either really smart or really sleazy. So they wanted a ton of money for Mar-a-Lago. I don't know, my numbers are going to be wrong, but something, like $110 million. And Trump is negotiating with them, and that's way more than he's going to spend. So Trump buys a strip of land between Mar-a-Lago and the ocean. And he says announces he's going to put up a giant, massive building on this strip and obliterate the view from Mar-a-Lago. And with the view obliterated, Trump's able to buy Mar-a-Lago for, I don't know, like 30 million instead of 100.
I think he actually bought it during the recession for $8 million, a real cheap price.
Right, yeah. But he said he was going to ruin the view, got it for super cheap, and then never built the project that was going to wreck the view.
Yeah. Well,
hold on a second, Nick and Rick. I just want to hear from Steve, because we've got the man that travels the political landscape and definitely sometimes even stumbles across these folks like Kamala and Manchin and Trump, maybe even Trump.
All right, guys, this was multitasking. Well, real quickly, and I'm going to try to open up tomorrow, guys. It's just that COVID restrictions lifted, and we're back in the office pretty much all day from like 8 to 5. So I'm actually not from home anymore. And so I can't, do it when I'm in front of a workplace. But real quickly, the main thing I would say is that the big issue going on is the bombings in Pakistan. That was kind of interesting to see there. The Mayorkas situation, avoiding impeachment by 4 Republicans switching over, the border deal and the Ukraine deal failing. All of these things are happening. There's been claims from President Biden that Trump is weaponizing the immigration issue, the border issue. And what's interesting is where Mark and Nick and I live in North Carolina, it's just amazing the localization of the Palestinian issue. There have been at least 300 Palestinians coming to the Raleigh City Council meetings, which is our capital city. And yesterday, the mayor and the council, the mayor, Marianne Baldwin, issued a statement that they would not be issuing a resolution for a ceasefire. Durham is going to be doing a resolution of ceasefire. I just, I don't understand what a city council can do to resolve it. I mean, I think they're coming to the wrong body of government. But what I think is it's going to start spilling over everywhere. And then yesterday, the final thing I'll say, really fascinating event I went to called the State of the Region about Internet of Things and smart cities and kind of like what it's going to do to create jobs and things like that. So pretty interesting, and we'll see where things go. But
well, Steve, two quick questions for you, because one is something that Rick brings up oftentimes, so that'll be my second question. I know we've only got about another 10 minutes to go, and all along those lines. But you mentioned these cities making these resolutions, and this is not anything new. Cities have made resolutions around apartheid. They've made resolutions around a number of things. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even during World War I and some of the wars that were in other states and other countries, like even the Falkland Wars and a number of other things, cities will sometimes make a resolution just in support of whatever they feel is the cause, and all along those lines. Now, do they accomplish anything other than being able to say that they are on one side of history or another side of history? I would agree with you that they probably are only, in a lot of ways, lip service. And one of my favorite blues songs is called Lip Service and Lies. But a lot of times people just give lip service to whatever they're doing. But even with the Black Lives Matter, there were a number of cities that came out in support of resolutions around George Floyd and a number of other things. So I do know that cities will sometimes.
I personally believe resolutions are, you do too many of them, and I think you kind of defeat the purpose. I mean, I think you want to do proclamations on special occasions, whether it's Black History Month, Pride Month, MLK Day, Day of Service, Asian American Heritage Month, Veterans Day, which is a big one. There's many, many days. But then I think if you do a resolution for every major national issue, your local government meetings could be going for a very long time. I'm assuming that big cities like New York and Chicago and Atlanta don't do that.
No, they do them too, Steve. They do quite a few of them.
Oh, do they? Okay. Well,
they shouldn't. They shouldn't, because I think it's beyond their jurisdiction.
I think it's politically.
I would object to saying national and international on a.
I think it's political correctness, and I think that I think that in this world that we live in, it's so easy to. When you look at the Palestinian issue, what I'll say is interesting is that more of the progressive liberal Democrats are really using this as a fringe issue. So I think, like in the mayor's race now, if Marianne Baldwin does run, she's going to have the leftists come and say, look, she turned on us. But I don't understand how it could be really a Democratic or Republican issue. So I don't like it when these issues are. Now, I'm not saying, I do believe on the record there needs to be a ceasefire. I really do believe that. And I think that we pray for peace. At the same time, when I say that, I also think that what happened on October 7th was horrific. Now, I think many of the Palestinians that are arguing for that, are admitting that what happened in Hamas is terrible. What they're arguing for is legitimately that we need to stop. But until you get Netanyahu out of power, it ain't going to stop, right? And then meanwhile, we've got a war in Ukraine where billions of dollars at stake here. And I'm actually asking people to support Ukraine, calling our senators and things like that. So anyway.
Just really quickly, and that was the other question I was going to get to you and everything, because Rick has brought it up on some of his shows as well as everything else. And you mentioned you went to this state of things. So what is the state of things in the notion of technology and infrastructure? Because I know that's an important issue to you, and I know that Rick brings it up all the time because he's of the opinion, he can correct me if I'm wrong, that the internet is definitely going to be even more prominent in our lives and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on this event that you went to on the state of things.
Yeah, and I'm going to be bringing Tom Snyder on as a guest probably in a week or two to talk about it. So basically, for those listening around the world, this was called the Riot Organization, the Internet of Things. And it's all about using, and we've talked about it before, sensors and data and technology and what we call a data economy, where you can manage your facilities, you can manage traffic, you can enhance the quality of your services. And all of these things that are embraced as you deploy broadband in local governments, in cities, can actually then create jobs. So they have incubators where startups come and start their company. It's called the Internet of Things, connected communities, smart cities. And so this is a really, really exciting thing. And so to answer your question, what Mr. Snyder acknowledged in North Carolina is that the jobs are really growing with these startups. Sasha Starr might be interested because he has a show called Modern Investing. One thing he talked about is venture capital, that the larger venture capital deal isn't really, really good. What really goes more valuable is the smaller $5,000 and $10,000 checks and $50,000 checks, because those are the checks that can actually give the company the cash they need to then reinvest and be, rather than large pools of venture capital. The other thing that they brought about, and I mean, I don't know if this happens in Canada, but in the United States, what's happening is $431 billion of tax incentives were provided to companies that eventually reneged on their agreements in North Carolina. So the question becomes, what Tom Snyder was saying is, do we want to invest more money in these, small companies, right? Rather than giving these big deals to Apple and, Wolfspeed and VinFast and all these, electric manufacturing companies that promise thousands of jobs and then they don't do it, and then they go defunct, right? So I think these are things that we have to acknowledge and understand, and so but Mark, that's it. And so it was given in a State of the Union kind of fashion, no flags, but State of the Region, like State of the Union. So I asked him next year if I could be his designated survivor, but it was a great thing. And
one problem with the startups, Steve, at least the last data I got, and you're not going to like it. The odds of a startup survival is 1 out of 400. The odds are pretty poor. So when you're a modern investor like Sasha, he ain't gonna put his money in a startup, because I said, Sasha, I got a deal for you. You put in 10 grand, you put in 20 grand, you put in 100 grand, and you have a 1 out of 400 chance of making money. What are your thoughts, Sasha? Are you gonna roll the dice with those long odds?
Yes, I would. I would go to Las Vegas, and that's where I would put my bets. No,
Yeah,
I have much greater percentage of success in Las Vegas.
Yeah. People don't know how poor their odds really are when they go, hey, I'm gonna go start a company and I'm gonna be successful. Yeah, you got a 1 out of 400 chance.
It's really
Speaking of odds and everything, and I know we're winding down, there is a show that is now airing this week because of our other founder being at the Super Bowl. And so we have picked up again Walter Football. So the second episode is up now, and they are actually talking odds, because they're talking odds around the Super Bowl game as well as odds around some of the players and a number of other things. So there are 2 episodes up right now. So if you go to the podtv.tv, you will see that Walter Football and some of his cohorts are actually doing predictions around the Super Bowl and all along those lines. I think that the line right now, if I'm understanding correctly, and those of you that are bettors might know better than I do, but I believe that actually San Francisco, even though they don't have the Taylor Swift factor, is the favorite at this particular
narrow moment. Favored by 2 points last time I looked.
Right. So they are a narrow favorite, and that's part of what they were talking about, because they were talking about betting. And I know Sasha gets into this, the over and under, and even betting on some of the things that go on. I know there might even be some people that will be betting on the Super Bowl and who Usher might be bringing into the Super Bowl as well. But yeah, on podtv.tv for this week, I know that I think Kim will be bringing us some coverage, and we've also got Walter Football with his daily show. So we've got 2 episodes of Nick already. So I put up the other one earlier today.
Yeah. We're actually, Mark, we're covering the Super Bowl parties, okay?
Right.
Because CBS has the rights to the Super Bowl. And by the way, we've covered Super Bowl parties and stuff for like 3 years now. Let me tell you one of the problems. If you use the term NFL, they send their lawyers after you.
If you use the term Super Bowl in an ad, you can't. If you're selling TVs, you have to call it the big game in the ad. If you say Super Bowl TV deals, you'll get a letter from lawyers.
I know that. The NFL is one of the most aggressive, non-for-profit. They're a not-for-profit company. Aggressive groups of billionaire jerks in the bloody country. Okay, so our relationship with them is kind of like a fringe relationship because of who they are, and you're right, Rick. Okay, me just putting Super Bowl on Pod TV, I get a letter from their lawyers saying, you can't put Super Bowl on Pod TV.
Can't put Super Bowl on there, and I know we've got Modern Investment coming up, but I got a quick question, speaking of the Super Bowl, as we're heading out and everything, but this is a quick question that everybody can answer in one statement or not, but I was speaking of another sport, to a former person connected to our network that is still doing some independent stuff on his own, and he is of the opinion that the NBA players rule the league and not the owners. I actually think the owners rule the league and everything, but I was just wondering y'all's thoughts on that really quickly. Are the NBA players the ones that are ruling the game? Because he was thinking about like how they will take off when they are feeling sick and that whole load management. But I think that the owners rule.
So I mean, so an NBA
Guys,
player.
I gotta run. Have a great day. Go
We'll
Chiefs.
see you
Go
soon.
Chiefs. Go
All
Chiefs.
right.
NBA player might, a
Okay,
great player might get
See you
paid
tomorrow.
$25 million a year. The owners, they off of their teams, a pro team is worth upwards of
Billion.
60 billion, $100 billion
Billions.
now, and the value of that team increases probably by 8% a year. So a team owner, just in capital gains is making what, $80 million a year just for sitting on his fat butt.
Yeah, but the thing is they'll never pay the capital gains tax because there's a loophole they just put in the law. I have a whole book on it. That they can actually sell their entire NFL franchise and reinvest it in certain communities and pay zero capital gains tax.
Oh, that's convenient. And plus, like athletes to wreck their bodies, and an NFL player, I don't know if the stats are.
Athletes are like pawns in the game. The thing is, the billionaires, by the way, it was Sean Parker who was the one who passed this bill that allowed them to escape all capital gains tax on sales of assets and moving their assets into opportunity zones. And there's somebody on our network who specializes in Southern California on opportunity zones. So if you're listening and you're about to sell something for 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, doesn't matter, and you don't want to pay any capital gains taxes, you don't want to pay any taxes, I would say go to the magic land of Oz, the opportunity zone. And then what you can do is you can sell it and pay no capital gains tax and move your assets into different assets without paying taxes. So welcome to the billionaire class.
The average NFL career lasts 4 seasons.
Yeah, correct.
And most NFL players end up going bankrupt because they die. Their life expectancy is in the 60s compared to.
Yeah, basically the NFL is a horrible job opportunity. If you can be a baseball player or a basketball player, your longevity. We actually, our pension company, we did some minimal consulting for both the NFL and the NBA. The NFL, horrible. The NBA, much better. In other words, in terms of being able to retire with a decent. But the odds again, they don't tell the kids, okay, hey, I'm going to quit college and I'm going to go to the NBA, and they end up on the Indiana Anteaters. Okay, they never make it.
I know we're heading out the door, but did they tell them about the odds? Because you mentioned it earlier, and Sasha mentioned it on his show, of being successful in business. Because I know that the odds, you were talking about some of those odds of being successful in a restaurant are very low as well. I think it's one in something ridiculous all along those lines. But a number of people think that they want to be restaurateurs. And then you've got some restaurants that have some very interesting rules. Like I think that it's one of them ones, it might be Chick-fil-A, that they will not do business on Sunday, and I know that there are some liquor companies that won't do business on Sunday as well because they've got certain religious rules that they are trying to follow also. So I think it's Chick-fil-A and Great American Hero and a couple of others that are like, I work 6 days a week, but Sunday, not happening.
The restaurant industry is generally a loser. So people that are, if you looked at the odds on that, it's generally a loser. There's one, but you need about $5 million in capital to even put it up, is the Cheesecake Factory. I think it's traded on the New York Stock Exchange as cake. But still, even those, even if you buy into that winner as a slow winner with a lot of capital tied up, and you're in a market that can turn on you in a New York minute. So I had some friends that did this. I've had clients over the last 40 years, and let me tell you, they're all losers. I mean, it's just like, wow, if you got any brain power, find something else.
Restaurants, bars, nightclubs should be vanity projects only. You can make a bunch of money someplace else, but you want to have a place to hang out with your friends, then start a restaurant. Don't expect to make money.
You're right.
Rick and Nick, I'm going to do the rhyming thing right now. So you're trying to tell me that I don't need to do any investment, and Sasha might think about this as well, in either Ray Kroc's company, which is McDonald's, or in the Colonel's Project, which is KFC, because they will make you not a whole lot of money, and you've also got to figure out where you're going to place them, because there's probably already a KFC in your town and a McDonald's in your town as well. But some people are thinking that
you got to do your homework. But also, if owning a restaurant or a bar is terrible, because if you aren't there every opening hour, your employees are going to rip you off like crazy. Like a bar is terrible because employees just naturally want to like give their friends free shots. There go your profits. Or it's a common, just universal scam. Employees bring in their own bottles of booze and they sell those shots, don't ring them up, and they supplement their income. And
there's another hustle with that as well, because I had some friends that worked in that space, and I do know that some of those bars are supposed to have the correct labels, and if you don't have the correct labels, the fine folks from the ABC will come and get you, because I know some restaurants that they didn't have the labels, and the labels had been kind of that switch that you were talking about, and they got busted by it. Because sometimes if you see the man in the suit coming by, he might be a mafia person that is funding the restaurant, because I know that that's happened in some restaurants that I know here in the area, or he might be the ABC guy.
I defy you to tell the difference by taking a shot between an $8 bottle of vodka and an $80 bottle of vodka. So yeah, if you can,
people do it.
Well, I may see the difference and test it, but in most cases, especially if you are making cocktail using vodka, then of course it's impossible to detect. But I want to tell you something about investing in public companies, including food companies and many others. For many years, I was president and director of a public company. And I know firsthand how public companies being formed and what kind of shares you can issue yourself as the founders of the company, officers of the company, and so on, and at what price. So this is a losing proposition, 100%, because most of these little companies will go bust sooner or later. Actually, the companies that I was founder and president and director of, it was in a business for over 10 years. And only then it was, we sold all the assets, we sold the controlling interest. And same thing I've done with this, my latest company that I formed in 2014. It went public on OTC. And in about 5 years ago, I sold my controlling interest and so on, and I made very good profit on that, and so on. So all I can recommend is not to buy, but to sell. Your investment, modern investing, is all about selling, not buying. You sell, you generate cash at the point of sale. You generate cash and you see the green on your screen right away. And the proportion, I'm normally selling 2 puts for 1 call, sometimes even more puts. Sometimes I have only puts sold short and no calls whatsoever, because general direction of the market and any given company is most likely to go higher. So therefore, if you are, especially if you're unprotected on a long side on a call, I will never put myself in that. I'm a strong believer in preservation of capital, and as such, I'm a strong believer in. I'm not a believer in diversifying your portfolio, but what I do, I'm a strong believer in hedging all your positions. All my positions are being hedged. I'm never naked in my positions. All I can say is that I'm preparing material for a book about how a Canadian piano player could generate 188% annual return. And you can do it too.
Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, because we're ending the show and everything. Just really quickly, because we're ending the show and all along those lines. But do you have a book? Because we do have a bookstore, and you said you're writing a book. Is there an existing book that Sasha Star has? Because I don't have a Sasha Star book. I know I don't have a book yet, but if you have a book, tell me the title so I can add it to our bookstore if there's a book that you've already written, because I know we've got some of our other people that have gotten books out there. And also really quickly, if you can tell people what they can expect at 1 o'clock on Modern Investment. But if there is a book that you have, let me know the title so I can add it to the story.
The topic for today's program is sell, sell, sell. Do not buy anything, because what you're buying is a highly risky bet. And the moment you're buying, and with all the fees, the spread between bid and ask, or so on, I don't know if you notice anything when you buy something, in next 10 seconds you are in red because of all these factors. So you don't want to see any red on your screen. So even if you want to buy something, let's say you buy, you like company, which one? Okay, you like NVIDIA, for example, right? Don't buy the stock, sell cash baked put. And if you will be exercised, so you will get NVIDIA at much lower prices than it is trading right now in the market. Most likely, your position will not be even exercised, and you will keep all the cash that you generated. I'm using different strategies on NVIDIA. For example, a couple of days ago, I sold 600. I think it was September put. So I still generated, believe it or not, profit. Also, stock is trading closer to $700 a share. So 600 put should cost nothing, 50 cents. No, I generated $18. It's $1,800. For very unlikely scenarios, the stock will go down to 600. But even 600, I'm still a winner because I sold, I've generated so much premium. But another strategy is that I'm selling, for example, I sold September 740 puts. The stock is below 700. So that supposedly is very risky transaction. How risky is that when I got a premium for each put $12,000? So how risky is it to get $12,000 cash for each put? I think it's risky for buyers of this put to pay $1,200, not for me. That's not risky position at all. But you have to understand it. You have to learn a lot of things. You have to really. I still don't have a mechanism how to teach any person to do what I'm doing, and I'm not sure that it's even possible. But we'll see.
So right now we're going to get out of here. We'll have another show on Thursday and Friday, and who knows, there might be some guests coming. If not this week, next week. I know that I heard T say he's got some guests in that whole startup space, and there are some other ones that I'm reaching out to as well, including some that are involved in some of the efforts in Ukraine. So yeah, I've got some guests for you that I'm talking to, Sasha, as well. Just like I brought Clem Boyd in, I've got some others that are doing some of the aid work in that area. So I'm hoping to have them on next week, Sasha, on my show as well as a couple of other shows, including this show. So hopefully we'll see them in the near future. But right now, let's get on out of here, and I'll see you at 1 o'clock for Modern Investment.